You hear us all right?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Okay, Joseph, how many do we have on YouTube this morning? 15? Okay, welcome everybody to our special meeting. It is Friday, June what, 30th, 23. It's 10 o'clock straight up. And if you all would follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll get this started. James, you just stay there. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll get started. Number 2A, regular agenda item, information, discussion, action regarding the neglect of duty by the Gila County Assessor. In accordance with ARS 11-664, the Gila County Board of Supervisors may take no action regarding the Gila County Assessor or suspend Joseph Williams as the Gila County Assessor for neglect of duty for a period not to exceed 120 days and appoint a person to fill the office to serve as the Gila County Assessor for the suspension period. And with us this morning we have Rick Husk and James. So Rick, you want to start this or James?
May I ask, Chairman, if we could, maybe, I don't know that he'd be present there, but at least make a call to see if Joe Williams is present to address this?
You may. Is Joseph there in Payson this morning?
No.
He is not.
No, he's not there. And we don't know if he's on YouTube or not. So with that, we'll continue on. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, sir. What do I do with my glasses? Chairman, members of the board, thank you. As I've provided you all a copy of a letter that was provided by Payson staff that they would like to read to you. Just make sure you have that. As you're aware, Mr. Williams was provided, Assessor Joseph Williams was provided a notice of today's hearing outlining concerns as to his neglect of duty. And just to review what those concerns are, the Assessor's Office has 2 unfilled positions, Title Examiner and Chief Deputy. Applications have been submitted for the previously posted position of Title Examiner. However, no action's been taken to hire without the assessor's input because he would make the final call on who is to be hired. The remaining management staff are overworked and morale in the office is low, extremely low according to staff, and all employees feel abandoned, as you know, some of the staff would like to share. An appraiser authorized a reduced valuation. They had a chief deputy, so a lot of this information came to light after that chief deputy resigned, Ken Burrell, and that was on March 29th. So we've been aware of situations with the assessor's office, particularly from the chief deputy, Ken Burrell, but more has percolated and come to light as a result of Ken Burrell's leaving. Part of the reason Ken Burrell left, and an appraiser authorized a reduction in the valuation for one resident and his appraised value, and the chief deputy indicated that no, you have to maintain what values are set by the state, etc. And this particular appraiser went to Joseph Williams directly, who supported her and said to go ahead and reduce the valuation. So that reduced the amount of taxes obviously collected by this individual, and it wasn't across the board, it wasn't at the standards that the county tries to meet and be consistent with throughout the county. This led to Ken Burrell saying Good morning. I would like your guidance on a scenario if an employee does not like a directive that is given by us and goes directly to the elected official who we are unable to reach, and the elected official countermands our directive without discussing it with us. How should we handle that? Not liking the response, not as a surprise, he submitted his resignation on the same day. That was March 29th. The assessor's office utilizes the CAMA system with the Eagle assessor, and it's statutorily required. If something goes wrong, someone needs to be able to sign off on requisitions and repairs. This is a statutory requirement to send out notice evaluations on property, and there's a requirement for printing and mailings and so forth to go out, postage and so forth. So there's always a concern for somebody to have signature authorization in the assessor's office, and we've had to work very hard, and it's been difficult to get Joseph Williams to authorize appropriate people to sign both in Payson and in Globe as is required. Taxpayers are adamant that they want to speak with the assessor, Mr. Williams. The last response taxpayer received from Mr. Williams was in February when he responded to Chief Lockhart of the Christopher's Coles Fire District. We've heard complaints come into the county where individuals are saying this is impeding their ability to do business in the county, acquire property, get the information they need to run their business. So we have had significant issues and complaints from residents not being able to address their elected official. Issues have arisen in the office concerning payroll and travel authorizations, as previously mentioned. Members of the assessor staff need to attend a Assessors Association tax conference later this summer, and without Joseph Williams there to designate who in his management team need to be there, staff are left to make that decision without having anybody that is firmly in charge of making that decision and deciding who needs to be there and who doesn't. But those conferences provide the state, the assessor's office. It's put on also by the Department of Revenue, and so they provide them a lot of legal information as to how to keep doing the job, the legal requirements of the assessor's office. So we need to be represented there, and we need somebody there to designate who needs to be there and to get the job done. Currently, Christina Hex in Globe and Yvonne House in Payson have separate signature authorizations, which the county has recognized to make sure that the functions of the office are able to be done. As employees may not sign their own payroll authorizations, we are honoring both those payroll authors, the ability of one to approve the other's payroll authorizations or timesheets, for instance. So, there's no one in the office currently to handle staffing issues. There has been an issue that before Ken Burrell left, he indicated that an employee was followed and harassed by a resident, and there was some concern of her safety. And she was going around, doing her job as an appraiser, I believe. And in any event, somebody off the street just saw her and decided to follow her around, and she didn't know what this person's intent was, and the assessor was not there to voice this complaint to or to hear how he would like it handled. Since that time, Ken, and prior to us leaving, Ken Burrell did assign 2 people to go out at a time so that this issue did not arise in the future. But again, that's a directive that should have come from the elected official, Mr. Williams. Ken Burrell was elected as president of the State Executive Committee for assessors. I see the acronym. It's AAAO, Executive Committee, and Arizona Association of Assessing Officers, and he was the president of that association. He failed to show up to meetings, planned meetings, attend meetings, or was late to attend meetings and didn't have the agenda planned. So on April 3rd, 2023, he was provided a letter, and I have a copy of that letter. Dear Assessor Williams, this letter is written on behalf of the AAAO Executive Committee. It is essential for all members of the AAAO leadership be available and engaged when we conduct and discuss AAAO business matters. Furthermore, in accordance with the AAAO bylaws, Article 5 duties, Section 1 states the President shall preside at all meetings and shall be an ex officio member of all committees. As a team, we have attempted to reach you to discuss the circumstances surrounding your absence without notice to the last monthly meeting held March 16th, 2023. We attempted to call you March 16th, 2023, just before the meeting started, to which we did not receive any response from you. In addition, we attempted to reach you on March 20th, 2023 to follow up on your absence and scheduled a meeting to discuss how Executive Committee could assist you in your role as president of the organization. Prior to March 16th, we tried to engage you and schedule an executive session and discuss agenda items. However, you did not respond. As of the date of this letter, no one in leadership team of this association has received any contact from you. As an elected assessor of Gila County, your continued participation in this organization is essential. However, as president, your availability and engagement with the rest of the team is critical and necessary to continue the pursuit and maintaining momentum with this, with our initiatives. Respectfully, if you intend to continue your role as president, we ask that you contact the Executive Committee, and it gave the names. If you are not available to meet the needs of this role, we request that you surrender your resignation as president, but continue to maintain your position as a member of AAAO. If we do not hear from you by April 14th, we will be forced to for a motion to removal of the Executive Committee. Respectfully, the Director of Executive Committee members. And it is also noted that on April 20th, a meeting of this association determined to remove Joe Williams as president. It was seconded, and action was taken to remove him as president of that organization. Since February 14, 2023, the assessor has not utilized his card access to any of the county buildings from what we received today. That was February 14th. He accessed his card 3 times in February, 3 times in January, and approximately 4 times in December of 22. And sporadically prior to that. So this is not a recent issue. I have phone records which also show in general limited contact with anybody in the county or anyone else for that matter related on his work phone. And beyond that, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Rick, thank you. But before we go into questions, I'd like to hear from the ladies there in Payson. Would one of you ladies up there step up there and read the letter that you've presented? Just state your name and we'll get you set up there.
Good morning, Chairman, Supervisor Christensen, Supervisor Humphreys. My name is Yvonne House. I'm speaking on behalf of those of us who are present. We work in the Payson Assessor's Office. We have known Joe for a long time. We voted for him, stood by him, and supported him. However, he has let down his employees, by not being available, and to those who have voted and elected him in office. It is unfair for the ones who have done much of the work in his absence without any acknowledgement or decision-making on his part. As a leader, supporting employees is a top priority. It plays an important part in employee morale, confidence, and it helps facilitate employee growth. As an elected official, he needs to be available to serve our taxpayers of Gila County. Thank you.
Thank you. And so with that, Jeff, I'd like to ask you to kind of go over the statute that we're going to have to follow on this procedure and the ins and outs of it. The suspension is with or without pay, whatever you can tell us on it. And then we'll proceed after that with comments and questions.
We're dealing with statute number 11-664, which is a specific statute for the possible suspension of the county treasurer or county assessor, in this case, the county assessor. And paragraph A describes this meeting and provides that the Board of Supervisors may suspend the county assessor for neglect of duty. So it would be this board's responsibility to decide whether there has been neglect of duty. The statute does not say what the level of proof should be. There are 3 levels of proof. It's either beyond a reasonable doubt, by clear and convincing evidence, or by a preponderance of the evidence. And since it doesn't say which one it is, the normal standard of proof is by a preponderance of the evidence. So if the board finds it is more likely than not that he's neglected his duties, and that would be a sufficient burden for the board to find. The board shall give notice to the affected officer at least 5 days before the meeting, 5 calendar days. And so Mr. Husk could tell us what day that Mr. Williams was served with the notice.
That I don't have a copy of, but I can say it was last Thursday. Is that, yeah. So last Thursday, so I don't know the exact date, but it was more than 5 days.
Okay. So that statutory requirement's been fulfilled. And then at this meeting, the board takes action. If the action of the board is unanimous of the entire board, then the suspension is immediate. If not, then it's a little more complicated, but the suspension is effective at a later date. And we can discuss that now, or we can discuss it after the board takes a vote.
Well, I believe that later date, it would be 10 days from today, correct? It's by majority?
Well, it's one of 2 things.
Okay, let's
Either
hear it.
10 days after the action of the board, which would be a majority vote, or if there's no hearing requested, then at the conclusion of a hearing, it's 10 days if there's no hearing requested, but if there is a hearing requested, then it's effective at the end of that hearing, if the board upholds its prior decision.
Okay.
So in this meeting, we don't have Mr. Williams present, so we don't need to get into the question of whether there would be the ability on his part to have witnesses called to speak on his behalf and that sort of thing, since he's not here to ask for that. So I won't go into that
Okay.
part. The other question about whether the suspension would be with pay or without pay is one that is, I'm still trying to figure out. The statute doesn't say either way. It just says that the board can suspend the assessor. And so when it's not clearly spelled out, then it takes, of course, more work. There is apparently a statute that permits the board to suspend the constable without pay. But I'm not sure where that takes us, because that means that the legislature clearly knows how to tell you when you can do it without pay, and didn't. So that must mean they didn't want it to be without pay. Or you could go the other way and say, well, since we can do it with constables, we can do it here too. Well, you get into this position where you're trying to figure out what a court might say if you just suspend him without pay and then you get sued for it. And no one knows the answer to that question until you get the answer from a court from a lawsuit. But generally speaking, counties have the authority that the legislature has specifically granted the county, or if it hasn't been expressly granted, it's necessarily implied. But the courts have interpreted those words necessarily implied very strictly. So it can't be just a general, oh, we have a need, but it has to be a very absolute necessity to be able to do it. So I can't give you an answer to that question.
We'll just see what.
Taking a risk, if you suspend without pay, you're taking a risk because there's no specific law on that question. And it's really up to you. I can give you more on that later, but right now that's about all I have.
Okay. So I think we've heard a lot of the ins and outs, so now I'll open it up for questions. And James, you were wanting to chime in there a minute.
I was, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Christensen, Supervisor Humphrey. I know that you as a board, you take this very seriously, and the reason that the assessor and the treasurer are the two that are identified as the board being able to take action for in this case is because of the financial implications that could come from neglect of duties. And you as the board, you have the responsibility for everything, all the financial affairs of Gila County. And so that's why you're given this authority here. Typically, I know you respect the voters in Gila County having elected Joe Williams as the Gila County assessor, that you respect that choice. There's been comments or questions that I've heard that, well, why haven't we taken action? Why has this been going on for several months? It's really the responsibility of if somebody's in office and not fulfilling their responsibility, it's up to the voters of the county. Those that elected that person to recall the individual or do whatever part of due process through the election process to make the change that the electors did in the first place. But as I was saying, that because this can financially impact the county, that's why you have this responsibility. That's why you're here today, is because continued neglect in the assessor's office can have a negative financial impact on the county. And so thank you for the, I guess, courage to be able to address this and take a look at it to ensure the financial viability and health of Gila County. I will say that, as Rick noted, that this has been ongoing for a number of months. Actually, I went to Mr. Williams' home last fall, and there was an instance that Mr. Williams was not responding to staff to Ken as the chief deputy appraiser, assessor. And so I went to his home, met with him, and talked to him. So it's been in quite an amount of time that this has actually been ongoing, and very little reaction. There are good staff in the assessor's office. They're able to do their jobs. They have been trained. They've been able to do what they need to do. They need to be able to have somebody that can administratively take care of the functions in the office so that they can continue and they can go forward on things that they get to a stone wall without having somebody there that can make decisions and do certain authorizations for things such as hiring employees, that they they're stuck right now in being able to fill positions. They're stuck at being able to administrative, even to approve timesheets. That they're stuck in administrative matters that impacts them, as has been mentioned, of low morale and an inability to accomplish things, having to fill in along the way. So, I did want to acknowledge that there are good staff in the assessor's office. They are doing their jobs to the greatest extent they can. And so I guess that's good enough for now.
Thank you, James.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
may I address the board one more time to confirm that Joseph Williams was served by Constable Tony McDaniel on June 22nd,
Okay,
last Thursday. He was served with a letter that outlined the same material that I provided for today.
okay.
I could go over that letter verbatim if you'd like.
No, I think that's enough unless somebody has questions. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
So with that, with all the information we've heard, Supervisor Humphrey, questions or comments for anyone?
Well, I guess my first question is if it's all we have to do is prove neglect, and there's not a day number or something. At one point, I heard that you got to be 90 days with no contact or something of that nature. Is that true, or you just have to prove neglect? Yes, just prove neglect. Then, if this has been going on for quite a few months, why wasn't it brought to the board before we're losing employees out of the assessor's office and they're crippled to the point that they are? I guess my question is, why hasn't it come to the board sooner?
Go ahead, James.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Humphrey, when Ken Burrell was in the office, he was administratively authorized and able to carry on. It's been the last 3 months that Ken resigned and left employment that things have come to a stumbling block, to a dead end. And so in the 3 months that we've been looking at it, that it takes a little bit of time to, is there neglect? And out of the respect to being an elected official and not wanting to ever overstep our bounds. But it's gotten to the point that it needed to be addressed.
Yeah, I'm not going to beat on that anymore because, I mean, my deal, if maybe we would have reacted sooner, he would still be a valued employee with the county instead of having to refill his position. But other than that, I have no questions. It's pretty apparent that of the neglect that's been going on. It's pretty apparent of what the county's having to deal with his presence not being available, with him for some reason, which we don't know, and I guess at this point it doesn't matter of his neglect of the office and to the constituents of Gila County. And I think that it's a responsibility of me to make decisions so that the constituents don't suffer and the employees don't suffer any more than they already have. That's just kind of where my take is with it. I really don't have at this point any sympathy or empathy for somebody that has just neglected the people as he has. Mr. Chair, that's pretty much my comment.
Thank you, Supervisor Humphrey. Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the presentation that Mr. Dalton gave with regard to the statutes leaves some discretion for this board with regard to a suspension. And so my question is to the chairman, if that's okay, that if he calls for a motion, I'd like to make that motion, but can I include in this motion the suggested replacement, or would you like to have that as a separate item?
Jeff, how do you want to work that? You want to work it at two different motions or combine it all?
Under the statute 11664E, is it E? I can't remember. I've read it this morning. I don't think it makes a difference. You can do it all in one motion, or you can do it in separate motions.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
could I also ask if when you get to asking for a motion, that included in the motion as to whether you want this to be with pay or without?
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to have that included in the motion. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, would you like one motion or two?
One,
Okay.
when we get there. So, you got more questions?
Oh, no, thank you.
You're good?
Yep.
So I think we're all sitting here to correct a pretty tough situation, and we're willing to do that. I'm kind of like Tim. I wish we'd have tackled it earlier, but now knowing the ropes and everything, the only thing that bothers me is the 120-day suspension. We could be doing that again before next election. This could happen over and over and over again until next election. So if there's any legislatures out there, when they hear this audio, maybe they could go back in there and correct that to where we could make one suspension until the next election on an issue like this. Hopefully it never comes up anywhere again, but to have that in front of us is going to be something we're going to have to deal with. But with that, is there any other questions, or, yeah, Jeff?
I found the language. So, upon the earlier of a unanimous vote of the entire Board of Supervisors, expiration of the time to request a hearing after an affirmative vote of a majority of the board, or the affirmation of the suspension at the conclusion of the hearing, the board shall immediately appoint a person to fill the office. So it's like do it in two parts. If the board votes unanimously for suspension, then the board can immediately take action on a replacement.
So does that mean we have to do it in two different motions? Okay.
Because if you didn't have a unanimous vote, but it was a majority vote, then you wouldn't do that
Right.
yet.
Right, so we're gonna have to split those motions probably. You got something else?
No, just one question was, would there be anybody from that office that would care to be appointed before we make a motion to appoint?
So the information that I've received is not.
Okay.
And so, on that. Now, Jeff, I have one more question for you, if you would. The person that would be put into that position has to be the same political party as Mr. Williams, or no?
This statute doesn't speak to that.
Okay,
Well, there is a statute for another situation where there's a vacancy that has to be the same political party, but a suspension is not the same thing as a vacancy. As
okay,
Mr. Chairman just recently pointed out, we could be doing this again, because this only lasts 120 days.
right. Okay, I understand that. So, with that, I'm ready for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to suspend without compensation Joseph Williams as the Gila County Assessor for neglect of duty for a period of 120 days, and appoint a person to fill the office to serve as the Gila County Assessor for the suspension period.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that motion.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor do so by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Now, do you have a motion, or would one of you want to make for a
Yeah,
person?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I'll make a motion if
Or do we want to discuss it, or are we good to go?
I'm good to go.
I'm good.
Let's do it.
I had one question, it was asked and answered, so from that point on, I don't have a question. And so being that we will need to appoint someone, which will pretty much be, probably being sure that applications are out to fill vacancies, and administrative as payroll and things of that such. Mr. Minlove, you have been out ill repairing, but I see you back, and so I would make the motion that the county manager take that position on at this point.
I will second.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor do so by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimously. So with that, James?
Mr. Chairman, with that appointment, I take it seriously, but I will work with the assessor's office, with their staff. I'll reach out to Mr. Williams and try to get some interaction to see if we can't get some of these things pulled together so that they can operate more efficiently. But I promise that I will reach out to Mr. Williams and try to get his input as much as we possibly can.
Okay,
So, thank you.
so that's effective now.
Effective right immediately.
Okay. All right, if we're all set with that, I'd go to call to the public. Do we have somebody who wants to call to the public, or are we good? Are we good in Payson? Ladies are all giving a thumbs up, so we're good
We're
in
good.
Payson. I guess we're good here.
Mr. Chairman.
Do you need to fill out a form? That blue form right there on the deal there. We'll give him a minute to get that filled out, and then we'll go on. Questions? And so soon after this meeting is over, you know who to get with right there. So go ahead and state your name and
My name's David Berry. I'm kind of new to the area and been trying to get myself established. And due to the fact that there's been just a blank in people being able to give me solid answers on things, it's been nothing but an uphill battle. You know, it's been very discouraging. It's led to massive amounts of loss and profit and potential just opportunities on my behalf. And hearing that it's on the side of the public, how are we supposed to know when somebody doesn't show up for work? You know, how are we supposed to know and be so inquisitive on that? You know, it's hard to be a private citizen, maintain, you know, an income, do a job, and then keep track of officials that get to have the benefit of just being MIA and getting paid. You know, I had to separate from what I was doing to just come and speak because I think the public needs to have their voice heard. You know, it's been hard on the staff that's been in there. I've been in there multiple times and run into the same brick wall. I can't get an honest answer about anything. And it's not because the staff's not trying. They've been very helpful. They've been very kind. But when they run into a brick wall, you can just tell it on their faces that they're discouraged. You know, and then the quality of the service drops in the area, and then I can't recommend people to want to invest in the area. You know, I've had other people that have tried to spend money in the area, and they're still held up on issues of the same thing. But I just want to know how the public is supposed to keep oversight over its elected officials if everything's, you know, a request for records. Everything's so hard to get this information and keep track of tabs on people, because I'm sure the public would love to, you know. If they knew he was only checking in 3 times a month, I'm sure they wouldn't be too happy about it. And who do you ask? Who do I ask who's messing up here? You know, nobody at the staff, they just give you this look like, where do I get an answer? And they just couldn't give it to me. And it's just very frustrating to see that. And you know, you're worried about his paycheck, you know, and the potential losses for that. That's just a small drop in the bucket for how much ripple effect this has caused on not just me, but other people, you know. But when you're the end-all be-all and you give the voice of authority and you won't give it, it's nothing but discouraging. So thank you, and I hope that we can have more information on this in the future to prevent this from happening again.
Mr. Berry, thank you. James?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just offer, we can't comment in this part necessarily, but I will offer that if you want to hang around a little bit after, I'd be glad to visit with you on the side. So.
Thank you, James.
We can respond to criticism, correct?
Yeah, we can.
And we did make that decision today. We can't make it as an individual.
Oh, your mic's off, Tim. Your mic. There you go.
Yeah, we did make a decision today, and we can't make a decision as an individual. We have to be as a board. It has to be brought to the board, and it was brought to the board, and the board did make a decision.
The only thing I'd just throw out there for everybody is, you know, as electeds, it's a whole nother ballgame. It's a whole different program. It's tough. Even, you know, a lot of people look at us as Board of Supervisors that we're the ones for everything. But when it comes to other electeds, that's not necessarily the case. And so there's the statutes and policies and everything like that that we have to follow. And I would say I'd like to dealt with a long time ago, but you know, but we've got it done. It's done. And so with that, I'm gonna move on to updates. Supervisor Humphrey, you got anything for updates?
I'm good today, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm good as well.
And James, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here. I do want to say that May 13th, I was moving from an apartment downtown Globe here, down a flight of stairs, had a little help from behind, got pushed, and fell down a flight of stairs, broke my hip, and had surgery. That was on a Saturday. Had surgery on a Thursday, put pins and screws in my hip to hold it all together. I'm healing. I'm glad to be back. But that's been why I've been absent from being here physically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm grateful to Mr. O'Driscoll. During that time, he was able to manage things well. And we stayed in continuous contact. And I just really appreciate Michael and all he's done for the past 6-7 weeks. Thank you, Michael. I did want to point out that I have given you, we're going to be adopting the budget, and we've done a tentative adoption of the budget. And I don't know if employees out around the county, if they are concerned, well, we haven't heard anything about a pay plan. What are we going to do for raises? So I've given you today kind of an outline of what is going to be proposed as salary adjustments for employees. And if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just give some highlights of what that might include.
Sure.
We'll come to you on the 11th, hopefully to have it approved on the 11th, that whatever pay plan you adopt would go into effect for the first full pay period, which I believe the pay period starts on July 3rd. So later in second paycheck in July is when employees would see an adjustment to their paychecks. For 2022, the U.S. Department of Labor Statistics had designated a cost of living CPI inflation factor of 6.5%. And so it's been our goal to give a minimum of 6.5% to employees for fiscal year 23-24. And what that will begin with, and what the pay adjustment that's going to be proposed can be adjusted, can be changed according to your recommendations, what you thought, is that all employees would get a minimum of 4.9% increase, and that's every employee from throughout all the pay grades. With the caveat that as we've had discussions in the past about inflation and how it impacts somebody that may be paid on the lower, that's a little bit less than other positions, that we have a minimum of what each employee would get would be $3,000. So last year we just did across the board for $2 increase, which is $4,160 for annual increase for all. Proposing to have a minimum of $3,000 for all employees, which means that employees would get raises from anywhere from 4.9% on up to 9.75, so almost 10% salary increase for employee that is the minimum that they would get. Also asking to include 1.6%, so 4.9 plus 1.6 gives us 6.5%. That we can use in January. We've got some compression issues where, because of the 4,160, that employee that's been here for 6 months might be making the same as an employee that's been here for 3 years. And so an opportunity to be able to address compression issues. And then also, we haven't moved employees along in their pay grades at all, that we could use that 1.6% for pay for performance or an opportunity to move along in the pay grade, to advance employees in the pay grade. So those are essentially the parameters that has been put together and will be available for discussion on the 11th, when we'll have an opportunity to vote on what the pay plan is and will be. Did want to point out that we have reworked the pay grades, and it's a sheet that looks like this. And what this is for this fiscal year 22-23, the minimum that any employee would be paid was $13.80. And with inflation from a year ago, the state minimum went up from $12.80 to $13.85. So it was $1.05 salary or minimum wage pay increase for those. So what is proposed here is that the minimum for pay grade 170, which is our lowest pay grade that we use, is $31,200. And what that equates to is $15 an hour. It gives us, hopefully, that we can be competitive with fast food industry and others that are offering in that range in pace, and it's $15, $16, $17 an hour for somebody that works at McDonald's. So, but with the benefits, the $15 plus benefits we feel comparable and equitable, and where we can offer that. So that would be part of the pay grades that we're offering, minimum of $15. And then it systematically goes through all the pay grades that we have at Gila County. So I will leave it at that. Wanted to give you a heads up for that we can have discussions with you over the next couple of weeks, answer any questions you might have, go through the details.
I don't think we can ask questions because
Not right now.
it's not on the agenda.
Not right now. I'm just,
So we can't ask questions. It's not on the agenda.
yes, absolutely. We can't discuss it here, but we can certainly, if you have questions later on over the next week and a half.
So the only question I'd have, are you back in the office now, or are you gonna still, okay,
I'm going to be back in the office.
okay. So I think do you have any more with that?
No, that, I just wanted to introduce it to you. Mm-hmm. Not intending to have questions or answer questions
Right.
here,
Right.
but that we can have a discussion over the next couple of weeks, later on, not in this meeting, and that we can, so that you're prepared and have a knowledge of what it entails when it comes to a discussion and decision on July 11th.
Thank you, James. And with that, I think we've covered all bases, so I'm gonna adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you all in Payson. Talk to you soon. Have a good day.